Hey, this is Justin with daytradethemarkets.com, and I wanted to talk about four specific clues to today's turnaround. We had a pretty nice rally today after Thursday and Friday's sell-off. Haven't quite made up all that ground, but a pretty impressive rally by the buyers, and I wanted to talk about four specific clues to that. Before I do, as required by the CFTC, I have to put this disclaimer on here. Basically says that trading can be risky, and it basically means use common sense, use risk capital. Don't trade with your rent money, basically. So just use common sense and make sure that you're well trained and you understand the risks before doing any trading. Okay, getting back to today's market, I want to really focus in on four specific points throughout the day. Now, if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you know that I talk a lot about the 2 out of 3 method and talking a lot about different pieces of evidence, the big picture bias, and for example here, the big picture bias, which we know prior to the day, the zone evidence, which is support resistance evidence that we know throughout the day, and then aggression bars and box evidence, which is what develops during the day. I'll link to another video or a series of videos that talk more about that in depth. Today, I just really want to focus more on specifically kind of honing in on the nitty-gritty details and talk about the short-term evidence, the aggression bars, and specifically box evidence. I want to focus on this first part of the day in here, and then I want to talk about the sell-off that we had early. I want to talk about the point where the reversal became clear in this area in here, and then I want to talk about where the buyers really took the bull by the horns and showed that they were in control of the day. So if I just go through this kind of piece by piece, let's talk about this first buying box that happened today. Okay, so what we had is we opened the day with a down bias, meaning all things equal, we would rather be trading to the short side unless the buyers are able to prove to us without a shadow of a doubt that they're in control of the day. Now, the first box of the day is a buying box, which simply represents that buyers are taking a shot. They're throwing a punch. Now, my strategy and what I teach is when we have a down bias, I don't want to mess around on the long side unless the buyers are able to prove that they can get above this box and do what we call accepting price above this box. Unless or until that happens, I'm still thinking more to the short side. Especially that's the case when you see that right off of the top, we get what's called a level 3 or an extreme selling aggression bar. And anytime you get an extreme selling bar near the high of the day or an extreme buying bar near the low of the day, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the end of the road, but it definitely means you better pay attention. That's a pretty big clue. And so the way I look at this is early on here in down bias, you can certainly be aggressive and jump in when you see this level 3 selling bar there. But a more conservative approach is to just look at this first box as kind of a barometer, okay? And that if these buyers are able to get above here, okay, we have to take the buyers seriously. If not, and if the sellers are able to do what we call accept price below here, then that really opens the door for sellers to come in, and that's exactly what happened. So this first structure, again, we see some good selling off the high, which is a pretty good clue. But more than anything, this is just a barometer. What are the buyers or sellers going to be able to do? Who's going to win, so to speak, this box? Who's going to be able to accept price above or below it? And you can see that, sellers were able to accept price below it and put in this selling box here. And again, with that being the context, we have a down bias, and we have a situation where this buying box has failed, and now we have a selling box that formed right in here. That means that it's really looking like this thing wants to sell off, and we know that being a seller in the upper third of a selling box makes good sense. Here's another one, upper third of a selling box there. Here's another selling box. It never did get up there, but it did come right up to the low of the prior selling box. Then we get a fourth selling box in a row. This is a scenario where, at this moment in time, the market's just incredibly bearish. It's stacking, what I call stacking selling boxes, okay? Shows us that until something changes, this market wants to continue to sell off. So hopefully you're able to find, one of several different ways, whether you're looking for this retracement trade idea, whether you're looking for a breakout type of a trade, whether you're looking for what we call an acceptance pullback type of a trade. Any of these ways are ways to take advantage of the context here that's saying this market is moving south and we want to be in that direction, especially based on the fact that this market is moving down. Big picture, okay? Now, I said we want to be trading to the downside unless or until that evidence changes, right? So what would be, a signal of that evidence changing? Well, this box, which at the time was the box on the low of the day, I'm just going to make that a little thicker to show it. If, for example, this selling box were unable to find resistance, it had a little bit of resistance there, but then the buyers got above it and accepted price above it, which happened here, That's telling us it doesn't necessarily mean the buyers are going to take it to the moon like they ended up doing. Okay, that's not what that means at that moment in time. It does mean that's our first red flag. That's our first sign of potential trouble when these buyers accept price above this selling box on the low. So now we go from what we would call a one-sided selling market or a trend type of a selling market to more of a two-sided market. Again, we don't know at this point that it's going to do this. We know that's now a possibility. We know that the sellers are possibly in trouble. And then we want to, what I call this is when we go from a one-sided or one-directional market to more of a two-sided or two-directional market where both buyers and sellers are in play, is we want to think point to point. So when we got above this selling box, what's our next decision point higher? It's the high of this box. That's our next decision point. So are the buyers going to be strong enough to come up here and break through there, or are they going to turn back around and take it lower? Well, it turns out they turned back around and took it lower. That brings us to our next decision point, which is now the high of this selling box that that just failed. In other words, we would have expected when this selling box came in that the high would hold, it would sell off, which it did to a degree. But once buyers get above it, we would expect that if it comes down here, it should offer support. So now we've tested these two decision points. We really don't know much yet. We know that it's a two-sided market. We know that, the first decision point here was held by the sellers. We came down to the first decision point here. Now that we've gone two-sided, it was held by the buyers. So what's going to happen here? Are we going to go lower or are we going to find support? We found support and it busted through here. Now we get a buying box. Then we get another buying box. This is a pretty confusing moment in the day because it's a transitional period in the day. We have clearly gotten some buying that's come in, and we've clearly gotten some selling that has failed in here. But at the same time, we've got a lot of selling from earlier in the day that would still have to be taken out before we could say buyers were really in control of this day. Certainly looks like they're trying, but you can see that as we tested the high of this box, which is our highest box, couldn't really do much there. And so we have a battle. We have some pretty good buying, but we have it where, they couldn't fully take out this selling box, all the selling that came in before, at least until this box formed here. This is now our third buying box in a row. So now we're stacking buying boxes, and we've taken out all of the selling from earlier in the day. That is the next part of the day that is showing us that, again, as long as the low of this box holds, which it does, we test below there, we never accept below it. And by acceptance, I mean 5 consecutive full bars below. We test there and reject. Can't quite get all the way there. We test it again and reject. As long as that holds, it shows us that but now buyers are in control of this day, and you could say they just took over. This is the real proof of that. It never did come back down to test here. Got above this box, accepted price, came back and tested the high of it and held. Put in another buying box, held the support, got above this one, got above this zone, put in another couple of buying boxes before the craziness at the cash close. But again, I hope this made sense. But the key here is that we had a few different structures, a few different pieces of the puzzle that came together just on this box level. Whoops. Let me get rid of these arrows and ellipses here for a second. So again, the key structures that we really wanted to look for. Start of the day, kind of our barometer, okay? Sellers take over, start stacking selling boxes. We think this is going to go forever until the evidence changes. That evidence changed in here when sellers were unable to hold the high of this box and buyers got above it. Now, from basically this point here through here, we're two-sided, back and forth, choppy, be careful, not certain. Buyers are trying to take over, but they still have to get through a lot of selling. Sellers are still big picture down, so be careful being too bullish. However, once we take out all the buying over here, we form this box over here, now it's really off to the races for the buyers. So again, I hope this made sense. This is just a way of trying to make sense of the context of the market in the short term and then putting it into the context of the bigger picture market as well. So hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Talk to you soon.